Hello and welcome to Government Minute, a very special edition Government Minute, the leap year edition. Yes, it's February 29th, 2024, the leap year. That means it's a presidential election year. We're talking about understanding the Electoral College. This is part 3. Check out the other 2 if you need them, and we're going to start right now. Hello Raindrops, new subscribers and old friends, and welcome back to Government Minute. Minutes that matter. This is Mr. A asking you to take care of 3 things right now. Like and share this video, subscribe to the channel, and click on the notification bell so you know when our videos come out. As always, this video is dedicated to the glory of God who blessed this land. So we've been talking about, this is the third part in a 3-part series of understanding the Electoral College. A lot of people don't understand the Electoral College. A lot of people don't get why we have to have the Electoral College. If you need the basics, if you need the from the basics up until the voting and actually naming the president and vice president, go to parts 1 and 2. You can check those out. And then here we go. So now we have a winner for the presidency and the vice presidency. January 20th, after an election year, they take the oath of office and start their 4-year term. So it works very well and has worked almost completely 100% with certainty, usually within hours of the polls closing. But sometimes there are a few quirks in the Electoral College, and sometimes that doesn't happen right away. Sometimes other things don't happen as well. So let's talk about some of the quirks in the Electoral College. The first one is the winner of the nationwide popular vote is not guaranteed to win the presidency. Now, please understand, in the grand scheme of things, as far as the Electoral College goes, the nationwide popular vote does not matter at all. What matters is the popular vote state by state. So in effect, you're having 51 separate elections on election day, not one. And so your popular vote does count in your state only. So, but yes, most of the time, the winner of the nationwide popular vote does win the Electoral College. Here are a few exceptions. There are 5 elections in which this did not happen. The election of 1824, where President Jackson won the presidency without winning the popular vote. 1876, President Hayes won the election without winning the popular vote. 1888, President Harrison won the election without winning the popular vote. 2000, jump up way to 2000, President George W. Bush won the Electoral College and did not win the nationwide popular vote. And as recently as 2016, when President Trump won the Electoral College but did not win the nationwide popular vote. So it does happen. Most of the time, both coincide, but it does happen where the winner of the electoral vote does not win the nationwide popular vote. But once again, please understand, your vote counts in your state only, not nationwide. Another quirk of the Electoral College is this: the electors are not bound to vote the way their state wants them to. They are called faithless electors. As of the 2020 election, there have been 165 instances of faithless electors, 90 for president and 75 for vice president. Now, please understand, these electors are mainly making a point because none of these electors being faithless swung the election to the other candidate. They had the luxury of making a point because their votes wouldn't make a difference one way or the other. In other words, the other side was going to win no matter what. So they chose to make a point where they're being faithless. But it has happened 165 times. Again, 90 for president, 90 votes for president, 75 for vice president. And in the 2016 election, 10 electors were faithless, voting for candidates other than the candidate they were pledged to vote for. Again, we talked about, in the last video, if any election, if it ends up in a tie, might end up in the House of Representatives to determine who is the president, and in the Senate to determine who is the vice president. So, some people want to change and go to a nationwide popular vote. Some people think it's a great idea for the people from the East Coast to the West Coast. It is, you total up all the votes, and then you total them up, and whoever wins should win the presidency. That sounds good in theory, except so many parts of the country would have no say-so whatsoever in who became president. So let me give you a perfect example of how the Electoral College means that some parts of the country do have a say-so rather than having just the popular vote. We're going to go back to the year 2000, the election between George W. Bush and Al Gore. George W. Bush, the Republican, Al Gore, the Democrat nominee. Very close race. He ended up in the Electoral College 271 to 266 in George Bush's favor. The reason it doesn't total up to 538 is one elector from D.C. Basically abstained, turned in a blank ballot, and so that's why it didn't total up to 538. But if you let's look at little old Wyoming. Okay, Wyoming is a very small state, one of the least populated states. It only has 3 electoral votes, and that's the minimum number a state is guaranteed. And so in the electoral vote total, the electoral vote was 3-0 for George W. Bush. For the popular vote in Wyoming, and I'll have the numbers up here so you can follow along. The total number of votes for George Bush was 147,947. Again, the state of Wyoming 2000 election. For Al Gore, 60,481. So grand total in Wyoming of 208,428 votes. All right, stick with me. For the popular vote nationwide, Al Gore beat George W. Bush 50,999,897 to 50,456,062 for George W. Bush. So Al Gore beat George Bush in the popular vote by 543,835 votes nationwide. So let's go back to Wyoming. Their grand total of votes was 208,428. If every single one of those votes had gone to George W. Bush, if Al Gore had received 0 votes in Wyoming. Now, please understand there are also other candidates, third-party candidates, minor candidates, Libertarian, Green Party, etc., which were, again, not a big part of the total. So we're just going to focus on the 2 parties. If George Bush had received all 208,428 votes that were cast in Wyoming in the year 2000, popular vote in Wyoming, he still would not have won the popular vote. So, in effect, Wyoming's popular vote didn't have an effect on the election, but their electoral votes did. George Bush ended up with 271 electoral votes, Al Gore 266. George Bush needed those 3 electoral votes, and Wyoming had a say in who became president. If it was a strict popular vote, they wouldn't have had a say at all. So this is the genius our founding fathers built into the system so that even the smallest states would have a say, would have some leverage in electing a president. So if you look at the totals up here about what percent of the popular vote Wyoming's popular vote was to the nationwide total, and then you look at the percent that the electoral votes of Wyoming, the 3 electoral votes Wyoming had, the percent of the 538 electoral votes nationwide, you will see that if my head math is correct, you'll see that Wyoming's electoral votes count almost about 3 times as much as their popular vote. And so if you wanted to change to a nationwide popular vote, small states like Wyoming would have to give up that power, that leverage, that say-so, that way to make a difference, that way to affect the outcome of the election. And you get past the bigger states. Remember, 38 states would have to okay this to change it, since it's in the Constitution. You'd have to amend the Constitution, and 38 states would have to approve it, and not all of those are big states. And so the small states, in my estimation, will keep the power and the leverage that they have afforded to them by the genius of our founding fathers. Our founding fathers were brilliant in making sure that every part of the country had a say-so in who became president. And to that, we owe them a debt of gratitude. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you paid attention, because there will be a test this coming election. This is Mr. A reminding you that we, the people, are the government. We'll see you next time.